This is our panel entitled What's New in the World of Ransomware in 2025. The idea for the panel is this. Ransomware, by and large, has not really majorly evolved. And what I mean by that is, yes, there's all kinds of small updates and things of that nature. We just had a major update right now where they're going for your cloud, and they're really going for your cloud. But as an incident response consultant, which I did for 5 years myself before moving to threat hunting, when you deal with ransomware cases, it feels like the same thing over and over and over and over. It becomes like a slow pitch softball. It's the worst day that client has ever had. And they're like, "All right, everything's on fire." But to you, you start reviewing, you start seeing the TTPs, you start seeing what services, what tools they're using. I think the last time I updated the tools, like the actual tooling itself that's used by ransomware actors in my class, Forensics 528, was probably 2 years ago, and there's no need to update it, really, because the ones they most commonly use are the same things over and over and over. So we have brought this panel in to discuss, okay, well, what really is new? And what evolutions are something that you folks watching absolutely need to be aware of and trying to prevent, and so on and so forth. I will introduce our panel members in the order they're listed on this slide right here. So first up, we have Mr. Allan Ransomware Sommelier Liska with the CSIRT at Recorded Future. I've had Allan, how many times have I had you on random things at this point, Allan? I don't know, 10?
I've been on enough sand things right now that I think I should get a jacket.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. I might have to send you one actually. Allan, quick background, if you will.
Yeah, so I've been researching ransomware since 2014. I first at Eyesight Partners, then FireEye, and now Recorded Future. And on the side, I make comic books, and that's really about it.
I still have your first edition signed. It's you can't see it on camera, but it's right up there. Thank you, Allan. Next up, we have Selena Larson, Senior Threat Intelligence Analyst over at Proofpoint. She came highly recommended. Selena, what's going on with you?
Yeah, thank you so much. I work at Proofpoint and I focus on cybercrime. So everything e-crime related, especially initial access brokers and the loaders, botnets, info stealers, and now RMMs that are often involved in many of these attacks. And before that, I was focused mostly on ICS, SCADA, threat research, threat hunting, and I used to be a journalist in my former life come from journalism and privacy and cybersecurity. So super excited to be here. I have been passionate about ransomware and cybercrime basically since I have been writing about technology and making the world safer. So it's always good to talk about it, even though it seems like ransomware.
Very cool. Honored to have you. And I like how you mentioned info stealers and RMMs because I'm sure they'll come up during this talk for very specific reasons.
I also want to add that Selena is among the best in the world at throwing shade at different threat actor groups. So if you need a threat actor group insulted, she's your go-to.
Together, Alan, we tag team, constant dunking.
I like it. And then last but definitely not least, we have Dr. Danny Quist, CTO with Unit 129. Quick background here. I used to report to Danny. We've become basically best friends. He lives half a mile that way. We go on walks every other week. I love Danny. He does amazing ransomware research. Danny, who are you? What do you do?
Well, that's a great intro. Thanks, Ryan. I've been doing malware since the beginning. I was collecting DOS viruses back in the day, which was an embarrassing amount of years ago. And since then, I reverse engineer. I look at IDA Pro, Binary Ninja, and now I'm trying to scale all that up at CTO at UNT 129. So I get deep in the weeds and love hunting actors and incident response and all that.
Very cool. Thank you, Danny. A random note here that a lot of what I initially learned in the in the malware realm came from that guy right there, from Danny. So we have our panel members, we have our general discussion topic. We're not only going to be talking about what's new, but also, as we can, how do you prevent it, right? How do you detect it, prevent it, respond to it, etc. And I would like everyone to know that in our initial call, where we were basically talking about this panel and coming up with ideas, it was good enough. We should have just recorded the darn thing and put it on YouTube. It was awesome. I literally had to tell everyone, okay, stop, shush, everyone stop talking. We'll do it on the panel. Like, don't save it, save it, save it. So let's start off with, and we can use the raise hand option, by the way, folks. So let's start off with just in general, what's remained consistent with ransomware over the past 5-ish, 6-ish years? What are the things that you see and you're like, yeah, duh.
Okay.
And
Go out.
Selena, you're up.
Okay.
Go.
So I mean, Cobalt Strike, Brutal, Silver, those things. Living off the land, is a big one. PowerShell everywhere. So much PowerShell. Just oodles and oodles of PowerShell. And it's funny, you talk about incident response and seeing the same things over and over again. So many times I've walked into victims and I find out they're not logging PowerShell, and it breaks my heart because of all the things that they have probably missed because they're not logging PowerShell. So those are a couple of things that are consistent, and then just on the other side, the constant infighting and drama between the groups themselves is always interesting. We generate so much threat intelligence because they're always outing each other because they're always mad at each other, which is very convenient for us.
Infighting. You gotta love it. Helps us out quite a bit.
Yeah, I was
Selena, you were
gonna
gonna say something.
targeting has also remained very consistent. So if you look back historically over like the evolution of ransomware, it at one point was targeting individuals, for 250, 500 bucks. But big game hunting has really been the standard. It has become the standard. And while I think that targeting has shifted to individuals for initial access, the ultimate goal is still enterprise takeover, and big game hunting, so to speak. So I think that that's something that continues, and is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, as far as what I've noticed, it's everything everybody said is correct. The game hasn't really changed, which is disappointing in its own way. But kind of the other one is the response to ransomware. We're getting to a point where a lot of companies can like effectively respond to the technical parts of a ransomware infection, but they're still choosing to pay the ransom for liability reasons. I'll bundle all of this under cowardice. But really, this threat is not going away. If you have a pest and you keep feeding the pest will stay. It's the same thing. Like Ryan and I live in Arizona. There are coyotes here. The answer to that is keep your cats inside, because without food, they don't come around. So at some point, we've got to cut off the food, and we need to wait for leadership to develop the gumption to actually do that.
I feed the coyotes right behind your house. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. All right. Let's move on to what groups are you currently seeing that are at the top of the pack, so to say, right now?
I think it depends on what you mean by top of the pack. So if you're talking about in terms of brutal efficiency, Akira to me is kind of up there in terms of their ability to hit targets and wrest money from those targets. But if you're talking about causing the most amount of damage, Scattered Spider / Dragon Force / whatever that whole cooperative is, they are the biggest attention grabbers. They just don't make any money. But just because they're not making any money doesn't mean they're not leaving a swath of destruction behind them.
Good
Yeah, I
answer.
think that is true. It's also kind of interesting that it's a little bit more difficult. I don't know, Alan, if you agree, but to sort of define, like it used to be very clear what groups were which, and who is doing what, and this actor cluster is only using this ransomware and they're targeting this specific vertical. But now it's a lot more sort of spread out. You have this sort of a constellation of different groups. They might be working together. They might get mad at each other. Someone might, go work somewhere else. You have many that are effectively teenagers that are just coordinating stuff on Discord. And so it's a little bit, I think there's different levels, so to speak, of the playing field in terms of like who are the ransomware operators, because you still have a lot that are operating very much as a business in terms of like how they're set up, who's doing what. We've seen, for example, like Conti leaks, Black Basta leaks provide this really interesting insight into some of these more prominent groups functioning as businesses. And then you have, some kids just calling people and deploying ransomware and trying to cause trouble a little bit more as opposed to managing it like a business. And so I think that it's caused attribution, like it's really muddled the attribution factor of, who's doing what. But at the same time, a lot of the techniques remain the same, and a lot of some of the things that they're doing and the ultimate outcomes are very much the same still too. So it's interesting to kind of see like attribution getting a little bit muddled, and having it not be quite so cut and dry as it used to be. But the ultimate impacts are still the same.
Right. I feel like there's a lot more fluidity now than there used to be, but they're all working from the same 10-year-old playbook, as kind of Ryan hinted at. So they've been passing that playbook down to the second and third generation now, but there's more jumping around between groups because there are more groups than ever before.
You remember the original Conti leak where they came, and I know you all do, where their training resources were leaked out, and it was I think it was called the translation was attacking Active Directory with Cobalt Strike version 2 or something like that. And it was literally a playbook, folks. Like it was numbered 1, 2, 3, do this, do this, do this. You got into a victim organization. How much money are they worth? Use these sites to find out. And it was like, and then run Kerber roasting, and then do this. That particular playbook, same thing all the time still.
I mean, what everybody's continually surprised about is that these organizations are run like a business with the same efficiency, but why wouldn't they? Right? You're always going to have new people coming in. You're going to have those same talent problems that we have out in the real world, where you have difficulty hiring people, even more because there's an ethical or moral component to it, maybe. And that sort of thing. And you're always going to have young upstarts coming in with a great idea to take over. So it sort of makes sense for a natural evolution. And there's defenses against that too. But right now we're in a very unique time where we are very good about complaining about it and talking about the technical aspects of it, but the things that'll actually fix it are not being implemented.
Right. I mean, I remember when in Operation Endgame, when NCAA exposed all of the affiliates for Lockbit, something like 80% of them had never made any money, had never successfully collected a ransom. Yeah, I joke often that ransomware is like multi-level marketing for bad guys, but it really is, because most of the affiliates don't actually make money. So I think that that's a really great point, Danny.
Okay, Allan, I'll let you start this one off because you've been talking about this for a while now, and I love your take on it. We had, was it 2018 slash 19, 17, where human operated ransomware, and then of course RAS, and people were able to just lease the ransomware and do dirty deeds. And for a while, number of years, the RAS groups ruled the roost, so to say. And the affiliates coming into those groups were just that. They were affiliates. For folks not aware, an affiliate that comes in basically takes a percentage share of the eventual profits, but their goal is to take the ransomware payloads and processes, for example, like the training from Conti, which included SANS courses, rude. If you're making so much money on ransomware, pay for our class. Just rude. But anyway, the affiliates don't have to develop the ransomware. They basically just work as the penetration testers, as they like to call themselves, get into the environments, or just use initial access brokers. More on that with Selena coming up. And once they're in the environment, they deploy it. Anyway, we then started to see a number of more splintered groups. A good example of that would be maybe Vice Society, where oh no, we're a private group. We're not a RAS group. You're not going to use our stuff. We're X number of people. We're doing our thing. We're seeing even more of that now. So, Allan, go.
Yeah. So the problem is that the shelf life for the large RAS groups is getting shorter and shorter. GAN crabs seem to last forever, and then Revil seem to last forever. Eventually, they get taken down. Lockbit seemed unstoppable, and then they were very stopped. And then you had Ransom Hub pop up, and then Ransom Hub got shut down really quick. So these large RAS groups are dangerous to be part of, because every time you're part of them, we find out how bad their security is. They need people to pen test them because they do a really bad job of protecting them. And so we are seeing, Akira, again, going back to them, is a great example of a group that we're going to just stay Akira, and we're not going to let a whole lot of people in, etc., so we can have more control. But we're also seeing so many groups that are just like, you know what, me and my three buddies, we're going to sit around, drink vodka, and do some ransomware. And I'm not stereotyping that all ransomware actors are in Russia, but everybody who lives in Russia is a ransomware actor. So the so we are definitely seeing that, and it's easier than ever. There's leaked lockbit code, leaked Conti code. There's so many different leaked codes that if you want to go and start your own ransomware group, it's there. Just grab it, and then you can go into any of a half dozen forums and buy yourself a victim or two from one of the initial access brokers, and bam, if you've got a little bit of seed money, you can start your own ransomware operation. Or you can just do what other people do, put a pretty face on it, put a leak site up, create fake victims, and then sell your ransom to other unsuspecting people and just collect that money. So however you decide to do it, there are plenty of ways for you to make money doing ransomware, or pretend to be doing ransomware.
Allan, hey, slow down, man. You're making it seem too enticing. Whoa. But yeah. Dragon Force, one of the current groups out there right now, has been trying to create, or they have created their cartel, which I believe was the term was first used with Maze back in 2019, I think. And they were basically saying, you know what, you don't have to use an affiliate model with us per se. Rather, we will just essentially sell you everything you need and or lease it like a RAS model, but you can have your own branding, your own leak site, your own this, your own that. And that's bothersome, because I think that's kind of their answer to the, if we're too big and have too big of a target on us, let's use the same model, but have everyone use different branding, so we don't seem as big as we actually are.
Well, it's a separation of liability too. It's like the people doing the actual hacking or developing the tool can make that separation between actually deploying it and using it for naughtiness.
Yeah.
I think that also has to play to it too. But just to go to Allan's point, where he says that the source code is available, it's out there, and it's being used. There's very, very little original ransomware or malware out there right now. It is extremely duplicated, and very interesting looking at that. So you hit the nail on the head with that one there. And there's a lot of infighting too. When people get upset, they go to another group and they steal the source code, or they leak their source code and that sort of thing. So it's an exciting time to be in the code analysis area, just with all this data.
Can I take a minute to pitch my new company, ransomwarelogos.com? We
Yeah.
make logos for ransomware groups. For $500, we will make you your own unique logo for your website. And we have templates for your ransomware data leak site available for $1,200. We do accept Dogecoin and Dogecoin only.
Okay. You're not going with your own coin for your ICO?
I am not doing my own meme coin. Sorry.
I really thought Dogecoin was going to take off. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever, and that it was such a horrible idea, but I still thought it was actually going to take off. I bought in. I was wrong. Anyway, okay. Scattered Spider. Back in 2023, they enter into the fray. They start the ransomware scene. They start working with Black Cat. They start working with, what did I just say earlier? Ransom Hub, Killen, and Arta just talked about it. And then now Dragon Force, right? They have a very different set of TTPs. The tools that they utilize, well, more the TTPs really, are staggeringly different. The levels of access they will gain within the environments they get into are very, very different. What type of impact are they causing on the scene, basically?
So I just want to get started talking about the social engineering aspect of scattered spider, and also to note that even the term scattered spider, I think, is just a little bit spicy. It's become like the Kim Suki of like crime, or where it's like, a lot of things are this called this. So I kind of want to just think about the like the umbrella of scattered spider, but I think what's pretty interesting is they really changed the game about social engineering, and they have become very, very good at it and targeting individuals, and doing, like via phone or text or overwhelming people, and it's changed this initial access from a very technical, interesting thing, you're hacking someone's computer, to you're hacking their brain. And I think that that's kind of a shift that we've seen across the cyber criminal ecosystem. I think in many ways, it was first started by some scattered spider and some similar threat actors, where they were going after individuals. They were collecting information on them. They're saying, okay, like, who should we go after? What type of things can we say? Can we blow up their phones with MFA requests? Can we get them to make bad decisions, make bad security decisions by annoying them so much? um, and I think that that's very, very interesting, because across the landscape, what we're seeing is people trying to manipulate individuals into making bad security decisions, as opposed to manipulating a computer into doing something that it's not supposed to. And I think that that has actually changed a little bit. If we're talking about like what's new in 2025, like we've seen that, for example, with Black Basta, the ransomware group. They used to be using loaders for initial access brokers, a very typical like attack chain. And then we've seen reports of, gray mail bombing and posing as IT workers via Teams. Again, like going after the individual people and trying to convince them via social engineering. And so to me, that was kind of the main distinction between pre-scattered spider and like scattered spider. But again, there's it's such a like a weasel word for this to describe this like eclectic group of individuals. So I don't know, Alan, if you have other thoughts on like scattered spider more broadly, I would be interested.
I wish they had been spanked as younger children than they are. So I do have a question for you, since you know so much more about this than I do. And going back to Ryan's first point, what are companies doing to adjust their defenses to this, though? Or am I too early? I don't want to jump the gun on you, Ryan.
From like a defender perspective for the social engineering piece,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's actually very tricky, right? So there are I hate to say like user education, but that is something that is so, so, so important, because this is a very human threat. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of technical controls that can be made to put in place. Obviously, you can, restrict, various Teams tenants from calling. Same thing, with various remote installations of RMM tools and stuff, allow listing a lot of the tools that they're using to actually contact people and individuals. Things like YubiKeys instead of, pass apps for MFA, things like that are very important. But it's also very fundamentally like a human issue, right? And so if you're talking to people and you're saying this is how they're trying to manipulate you, making sure that people are aware of that, I think is a very, very important piece of overall defense. Because if you're just relying on technical controls for something like this, that's a very fundamentally like human thing. There's going to be some gaps. And unfortunately, as we have social engineering and like human manipulation as being a key component of like an overall attack chain, the people have to be part of your defense as well. In addition, obviously, to a lot of these like very robust technical controls, but at the same time, like, making sure that users are aware, especially like IT teams, most importantly, like knowing what's happening and what the landscape is all about, is I think important.
Agreed. We have a number of questions in here. We've got about, I want to make sure I've got the right timing, 20 minutes. Yeah, 20 minutes left. Awesome. So let's hit some questions before we move on to the next one here. Someone mentioned Sysmon PowerShell logging audit policy win. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Back in 2016, I did a talk at a log aggregation sim conference, and we showed people how to enable PowerShell logging. And by then, it was supposed to have been common for a year or two, and everyone was like, "What? We can do that?" And we're seeing that in 2025. I'm like, "Oh, no, folks! Script block logging, module logging, 4103, 4104, potentially transcription logging, enable PowerShell logging. It's very important." We have a question here on, let me see the ones that fit the best. Well, someone asked, any thoughts on CLOP? What do you folks think about CLOP?
Not much. So, you know, it's funny. I have a friend who's a journalist who said that with the most recent campaign, the Clio campaign, Klopp reached out to them angrily because they weren't getting enough attention. Because people weren't writing about Clio the way they had written about their previous breaches. And you know, and I've written about this before. One of the challenges that the ransomware actors are having is they're suffering in the attention economy as well too. They can't get, you know, you have to take down all of the UK retail sector before people are writing about your ransomware attack on the front page, or take down Victoria's Secret. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where it has to be way over the top for anybody to write about it, even for cybersecurity reporters, because there is so much badness out there right now. And I think that that is hurting in a good way for us, but for the ransomware actors, it's hurting them. You know, I mean, from what I've read with their most recent attack, with the Clio attack, maybe they made $1 million off that. Like, you know, and that's, so you blew a 0 day. You spent all of that time hitting all of those victims, you know, gathered and stored all that data. And even for ransomware actors, hosting isn't cheap. And you made $1 million off that. That's what Selena gets for one ad on her podcast. So, um, so you know, or alternatively, for the cost of one SANS course, is what they made off that campaign. Compared to previous campaigns, that really is next to nothing. I mean, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's not quite that level. So uh, I think they're a very technically adept group. I think they have a unique attack focus, but you know, they can't get the attention anymore because there's too many other things going on that are equally bad in cybersecurity.
Yeah, some of these groups seem to be like very much set up to just gather attention and make a big fuss here. So like, you know, going back to like nobody's doing anything different, right? Your customer list is really what makes the difference. And why would anything besides making money matter to them here? So maybe this is just a glut in the market, the ransomware market, and we're seeing a bunch of amateurs here. I don't know. I can tell you one thing. Seeing my name on a cool SANS graphic that's being drawn right in front of me, my ransomware gang, that would make me feel real good to be name dropped inside of here. So yeah.
I love the CLOP. Did you see the CLOP?
Yeah, no, this is great.
I don't know if you could zoom in on that, but it's like, you're not talking about me
sad
enough.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Ashton. That's fantastic.
Ashton is amazing. I love her book, and I love I love the, you know, her emails that she sends out. It's incredible. I learned so much from what she does.
Amazing.
That's so good. Okay, go.
I was going to actually add on too of this, like, you're not really talking about me enough. The best criminals don't want to be talked about. So, and I think that that's really important, and something that I think gets lost in a lot of the conversation about ransomware is that so much of the ecosystem enabling ransomware are not being talked about. And the actual ransomware actors, especially those ones that are, you know, very cosplaying as these, you know, the mafia, you know, these guys who are like, oh, pay attention to me, But what's really enabling a lot of the ransomware ecosystem are people that you don't know about. And I think that that is changing a little bit. Allan mentioned earlier Operation Endgame. We had multiple disruptions and announcements just this in the last week, identifying individuals, identifying malware involved. One in particular, I think, was pretty interesting. Danabot, which was often used as an initial access broker. They worked with a lot of IAB threat actors. Not too many, though, right? Like they had a small group that they sold to, led to ransomware. And interesting enough, they also had an espionage variant of Danabot. So, you know, that's kind of stuff that like flies under the radar. You don't want to be known about it. You don't want the, you know, the spotlight on you. And I think for a lot of what's actually enabling the ransomware ecosystem is not the final piece that we're seeing of this, if we think about it as like an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is the payload, the ransomware, but all under the water is all of these other cyber criminal operations, the loaders, the botnets. You know, we mentioned information stealers, which I think we should come back to because that's huge in the landscape right now from a criminal perspective. And then, you know, remote access tooling, a lot of the stuff that is also making money, right? So they're not just selling to ransomware operators, they're making their money elsewhere. And so I think that in many ways, this hyper focus of attention on the ransomware operators and like, oh, look at these kids, like, look at this crazy spider, look at this huge takedown of this business, it misses what is enabling all of that. And I think that conversation is changing. But I think because the best criminals don't want to be known. They don't want people to be saying their names. They want to live their life, make lots of money, and remain very much in the shadows.
Unlike Stern, who got called out by the German government today. Thank you very much.
Yes, you absolutely love to see it. You love to see it.
So the
Stern
question,
was the head of Conti, for those who don't know.
so Allan, I'm going to ask you a question here. You say that most of these people have trouble actually making money and actually getting these across and like actually being successful at this. So why are there so many? What is the attraction that's pulling people here to this unprofitable business with a significant amount of risk and that? And that's a loaded question.
So I think there are a few things. One, it's like every kid in the US on the playground who wants to be an NBA star. They see the big money that some of the ransomware actors have made, and they want to go and do that as well. And I do think ransomware groups, like a lot of us, are susceptible to the sunk cost fallacy. Okay, so I'm going to start my ransomware operation and I'm going to invest money in this. I mean, if you look at the Black Basta leaks, there were a whole bunch of people in there trying to sell tools to the other affiliates to get them. So, you know, again, going back to that multi-level marketing analogy. Okay, so I paid for this victim and that didn't work, but that's not everybody's going to pay. So I'm going to pay for the second victim, and that'll work. You know, and you keep pouring money and time into it because you think that you are going to eventually make money. You're going to hit, you know, it's like when you go and you post a TikTok video every day because that one is eventually going to go viral and you're going to, you know, be, you know, social media famous.
Can I share a hot take?
Yeah, hot take away.
I have a hot take for ransomware too. To your question, Danny, why are they doing it? In my opinion, cybercrime is a byproduct of the world that we live in, and people who are in areas of maybe not such economic certainty, where there are not great jobs to be had, where there are a lot of things that are going on, whether that's an invasion of a country that their bodies are being put on the line for. You know, people in Russia are getting sent to Ukraine to you know, fight in this war, or whether that's in places in West Africa where there's not a whole lot of economic uplift, and you're like, okay, where can I make money to support my family in a way that, you know, it's not ethical, it's not legal, you may not actually want to be doing it, but it's how you can actually get money. And I think part of the solution to cybercrime is a very human centered thing, and it goes back to a lot of like, you know, social work, like human, like how can we make economies better? How can we make, you know, improve education, improve job opportunities, improve, you know, markets all over the world so people aren't necessarily turning to cybercrime as, you know, one of the only options available to them? How can we get these people to use their skills in productive ways? If you're feeling like you're left out left behind in terms of like the overall economy, it might be a place for you to sort of gravitate to. And I know, Allan, you've talked about some of these communities that foster a lot of this are starting online. They're not going there to be like, I want to be a criminal, but they find these communities because of whatever circumstances are going on in their life, and it's shaped them into becoming ransomware operators. Yeah, I don't know. That's my hot take.
Well, and you see this in the different communities that develop. So Russia has a strong technical education system, not a lot of jobs, and because of that, you get ransomware. In Brazil, you see more gravitation toward building banking trojans and info stealers. In Nigeria and Kenya, because you have native English speakers, it's easier to carry out business email compromise attacks. And so that infrastructure develops. I was just reading about Cambodia and how it's one of the largest places in the world for romance scams and pig butchering, and that whole thing is fostered there. Yeah, there may be Chinese gangs behind it, but they've got a population that can do it, or that can, lure in people from other parts of the world to come in and effectively be slave labor for it. So I agree with that completely. There's lack of opportunity, and the nature of that lack of opportunity drives the kind of cybercrime that originates from that part of the world. And I think that that's a fascinating social, political, or sociological analysis, but we also only have like 10 minutes left, so we should probably move on.
Speaking of which, so the bigger concern, new TTPs. In our pre-call, we talked about click fix, teams-based phishing, deploying from VMs, increase bring your own vulnerable driver, potential DLL side loading. What are the things that you're really seeing as like, okay, you need to move your focus, not move, you need to add the following to your focus in terms of ransomware prevention, detection, etc.
I can take this one. As a kid from the 90s, I would like to repeat the advice that I received back then. Patch your software, read your logs, do better on passwords. And as we discussed, it's not getting any better. Like we can thank you for making the point about the economics, Selena. That was going to be my hot take too. But like realistically, these guys would prefer to have like a normal job where they can go at 8 to 5 and not have to like have a threat of a predator drone dropping on top of them or getting arrested randomly. This does not make good sense for a long-term life solution, right? It's always going to be that short, get in, get rich, and get out, but it's just not there. So a lot of it, I think, is like educating them about options that are available. And, we can talk about creating opportunities, but that's not too popular these days. So that's where we go.
Yeah. And Danny, I'll add, as a fellow 90s kid, we got to talk data governance. Like, that wasn't part of my purview when I grew up in security, but data governance, knowing where your data is, knowing how it's being secured, whether it's in your network, your cloud, or your partners' networks or partners' clouds, that's a big part of what we do, because that data theft is an integral part of every ransomware operation now. So taking the basics that we started with and adding data governance to that is now, because unfortunately, if your data shows up on the data leak site, your CEO is not going to compliance and asking about data governance. They're going to security and saying, why is that there?
I'm gonna disagree with you. Like,
okay.
Locking the doors and that sort of thing is really important, but really where we're at right now is that we've proven that security can be bypassed by like a low-level IT employee who answers the phone and gives them the password to the casino, right? Like, that's just going to happen. It is not a hypothetical situation. It happens, and you need to have protections in place for when it does happen. So when your accounts get compromised by a low-level employee, it doesn't take over your entire AD. When your data gets stolen, it does not compromise your entire operation of your business so that you feel compelled to pay the however many $1 million settlement.
Say the buzzword. Come on. You need to move towards.
Go ahead, Ryan. I don't want to take your thunder here.
Zero trust.
Oh yeah, and then that is another thing. It's like the way that we used to do things now has a formal name about it and is defined. So that's good to see. But really, keep your crap as private as you can, and like put some thought into this a little bit, right? Don't put yourself in the ability, like if you know that you're going to have to get rid of this one thing and pay a lot of money for it, either protect the hell out of it or mitigate it. But you don't see a lot of forward planning like that.
I think where data governance is very important, though, is like the AI-ification of everything. So we're talking not really related to ransomware, so put a pin in that for like some other summit. But like, how are we, managing with all of this data that we're just feeding into this like giant thinking quote air quote machine? I did want to point out, so if like to focus on ransomware, you guys talked about very important things just from the overall landscape. The things that we are seeing the most of, RMMs everywhere. Remote, yes, as an initial access, we're seeing them drop via email, we're seeing them drop via web injects, via callback phishing. Like legitimate RMM tooling is being abused like crazy. I've had multiple friends whose parents have actually gotten Screen Connect installed on their computers, right? Like it's a big deal. So RMMs are huge, and then also ClickFix. If you're not familiar with ClickFix, it is essentially a social engineering technique that threat actors are putting on web injects to get people to infect themselves, run PowerShell, copy and run PowerShell. And it's expanding to Mac OS. Also, we've seen, we talked about that actually yesterday with my friends at Red Canary. So the ClickFix technique is wild. It's exploding. It's everywhere. So those two things I think are very, very important in terms of like if we're picking to educate and defend, those are two main things I think.
Thank you. I work on a threat hunting team, a managed services team. So we have at my day job. I won't mention where that is, but just go to LinkedIn. So we find it all the time. Click fix attacks all the time. And where I work, we have an EDR/XDR that does a great job of stopping the payloads that come down, whether you want to call that secondary, tertiary stage, whatever. But the click fix itself, so many people are falling for this. Please look up ClickFix. Please add it to your security awareness training. If you create it internally, go update. If you use a third party, ask them to update. Don't ask. Make them update. Go get it.
Yeah,
And you
it's wild.
mentioned info stealers. Info stealers is another thing that they're not new, right? But we're seeing this crazy increase in the number of them, the evolution of them, and even I'll let you go.
So yeah, real quick on info stealers, they are much more prominent than loaders and botnets right now at least in our threat data. Luma Stealer came under, it was like one of the biggest malware as a service offerings. It did get disrupted a little bit. It's not fully gone, but it did show that the mass market is malware as a service market is huge. And the actual output of information stealers, selling it for access, being able to kind of use that to get on a network and then use the identity and access to drop something like a legitimate RMM, to have a little bit more of like a living off the land type of attack chain in order leading to ransomware. We've also seen commodity info stealers sold to nation state threat actors. Microsoft just published some great reporting on that tech sort of ecosystem. So it's info stealers are huge. They are in many ways going after crypto stuff, and it's all about the identity. Like they're looking for an organization identity to exploit.
We saw just in 1 month on one Russian forum, we saw 25 million logs for sale from info stealers. And again, that's 1 month new, I should clarify, new logs for sale on one Russian forum in 1 month. And so multiply that by however many Russian forums are out there and how many months there are. And you can see how bad that problem is. It's huge. And it's basically means that any threat actor that lands in your network, even accidentally, will probably be able to find creds that they can use.
Okay. I think we can go on for hours, but we're at our time. So I will just say that I'm very thankful to have had all of you in the order I see on my screen right now. Selena, thank you very much. And to Brett out there, by the way, thanks for the recommendation. She's awesome. Danny, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know. Thanks. Great to have you on, man. Always good to have you involved. And Allan, of course, I'll continue to bother you to do ransomware related stuff for me because I love you, man. Thank you very much.
I'm at your service. And thank you for inviting us. This was amazing.
Yeah, great conversation. Thanks so much, everybody.
It was
And
great.
great
I planned to give you folks a little time to like, where can we find you now? But we just kept going. So if you want to check for any of the additional questions that are in the chat, if you folks have time, And if you want to just drop into this discussion, like what you're up to, you know, where people could find you, what you got going on, that kind of thing, that'd be awesome. But for now, we're done, and we have an awesome graphic for Ashton. We'll see if Danny's name is in there.
Love it.